Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome to another edition of Inside Arsenal Extra Time. It feels like a long time, James, since we got together to do one of this. Not been, what is it? It wasn't 7 days, it's been 8 days, isn't it? It's an extra day because we thought we'd wait until after the England game to record this. How has the international break been for you?
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, I mean, I was at Wembley, and we can maybe start by talking about that. I have had Wembley last night. I'm at the Streets tonight, which I feel like is probably one of the few musical acts we could both agree on the excellence of. So I feel like I'm using my international break time productively. What about yourself?
First of all, I don't like the Streets.
No,
I don't. Why do you presume that I like the Streets?
Naughty, isn't it? Your golden age.
I tell you what, you've just reminded me what I should have been doing this morning, and I forgot to do. And you've just reminded me by bringing up music, which I know is going to annoy you. And I thought I've got to bring this up to James Benge. Is that I am very, very excited at the fact that Liam Gallagher's announced the Definitely Maybe 30 tour, and pre-sale tickets went on sale today for Manchester because I want to go up to Manchester and do it properly next June on the Saturday night. And I need to make sure I get my hands on those tickets. And yeah, pre-sale was started this morning, and I forgot. And you just reminded me on that, so I need to get on that. And yeah, fancy coming?
No, it's like it's the worst Gallagher brother as well. Oh God, I can't. I mean, it would be churlish for me to claim that Definitely Maybe has like no good tunes on it. But Definitely Maybe has no good tunes. No, I mean, obviously, definitely. You'd like if you're taking me see Liam Gallagher, I'd want to do, you know, one where he does not play any of his solo material, nothing from BDI, nothing that Oasis.
It's a Definitely Maybe.
Yeah, that's exactly. That sounds all right. But you know what he's going to do? He's going to be like, and now a new song. And I know everyone will go to the bar, and the cues are the.
It's every song on Definitely Maybe and the B-sides from that era as well. My biggest regret, honestly, mate, my biggest regret in my gig going life, and I went to a lot of gigs when I was what do I describe myself as a kid, maybe a little bit older than a kid. I loved it. My biggest regret is I never saw Oasis live because I was such a Blur fan that
sitting there. Now we're talking.
I could not bring myself to go to see Oasis because I felt like I'd be cheating on Blur, and that rivalry. And this is way before your time, I know. But that rivalry was it was just such a brilliant time for music. That just like, it was so good. And I could not bring myself. And I'm always like this. It's like I could never play a Sega console because I was such a Nintendo boy. And yeah, I was very much like that with Blur and Oasis. But I regret it so much now. So I have to go. I have to get tickets for the 30-year anniversary. Absolutely have to.
On Blur, and this will be particularly relevant to our YouTube viewers. I mean, finish our show first of all. It's going to be a good one, I think. But afterwards, if you go and find footage of Blur's Glastonbury headline set in 2009, and you look for a person, he's crying a lot of the time in sort of white, red, and blue checked shirt thing that was very much in at the time. That is James Benge. Near the front row of Blur's legendary 2009 Glastonbury performance. Partly the tears are it's Sunday night at Glastonbury, but like I am with you that Blur are, you know, the Britpop kings, and I wish I'd seen them at Wembley this year. Those gigs apparently were incredible.
Yeah, they were apparently incredible. I was crying that night watching Blur, but I wasn't crying at Glastonbury. I was crying in my bedroom because all of my mates were in Glastonbury and I wasn't, and I decided not to go. And I watched that set and I just thought, I cannot believe I have not gone to this when all my mates are there watching that. And yeah, that is another big regret of mine. But look, we're up to 4 minutes, 10 seconds, and we haven't mentioned Arsenal yet, James.
Good.
And this is, of course, Inside Arsenal Extra Time. So I hope all of you guys are still watching after our impromptu chat about Oasis versus Blur. But yeah, aside from that, been a good international break, not been missing Arsenal too much.
It's like, you know, it's a bit like Jaws, isn't it? It's too quiet. It's suspicious, something. Not. What about you?
Yeah, no, have I enjoyed it? No, I haven't. I never enjoy international breaks. It's kind of weird though. It's like going into it on the back of that Man City win. It was like, well, you can go into it and just enjoy that win for like 2 weeks, but also you just desperately want to sort of try and back up that win and win another game. And of course, there's a really big game coming up this Saturday, which we're going to spend a large chunk, I imagine, of this show talking about. So yeah, I'm glad it's over. I'm glad by the looks of it, everyone is returning home injury free. touch wood, I haven't heard anything. There's been no reports from, you know, whatever countries the players have been representing that anyone has got injured. So fingers crossed that is the case. Arsenal have a clean bill of health when they get home. Well, they'll be arriving today, won't they? So, yeah, you're at Wembley last night, weren't you? That was a good win for England. I thought they played really, really well. I was watching it at the pub, so and they didn't have the sound on, but it was I really enjoyed it. It was a really good performance. And Jude Bellingham, what's that unbelievable player? Jude Bellingham is just outrageous what he's doing at his age.
I mean, like, you're really conscious, aren't you, that we the England football public get carried away very quickly, but like, he's one of the best players in the world. This guy is incredible, and he wasn't a number 10 really that much before this season, and Ancelotti's asked him to do that for Madrid, and it's like he's played there his whole life. He was brilliant. You know, like the glory days of sort of Arsene Wenger football, where and Leith will attest. I was sat in the press box just guffawing on multiple occasions because Jude Bellingham had done something else absolutely ridiculous. The interplay between him and Foden and Rice and all those guys, I mean, it is a special time to be a part of the England viewing public. And I mean, I don't know if we'll go and win Euro 2024, but I feel like these guys aren't going to sort of let it or have kind of frustrate England in the same way that that the golden generation did, and I think that's who we'll always compare them to. But yeah, really good game.
I think they've just got that swagger about them. This group that I think sort of makes them a little bit different. Obviously, they've got tournament experience now. They've gone deep in the last few tournaments, not gone all the way, but they've gone deep, and I think that's going to help them. But they just the way they carry themselves, and especially Bellingham, you know, someone so young, he's just got that Henry-like arrogance where he knows he's that good, and he's just not afraid to show it. And you know, some of the top players, they need that, I think, to really sort of sets them apart from, you know, killing Mbappe. And I'm not saying Bellingham's killing Mbappe yet or Henry yet, but he's just got that same sort of air of arrogance about him when he's on the pitch, and he just knows, yeah, I can pretty much do what I want on this pitch. I'm that good. And yeah, it's going to be really interesting in Euros. I mean, if it's going to take a good team to beat England at the Euros, so that'll be one to watch. France obviously have done very, very well. Portugal have qualified as well. And actually, talking on Portugal, that sort of brings us on pretty nicely to someone I wanted to sit down and discuss. I've had a few questions regarding this, and we both thought it might be a decent sort of time during the international break to discuss him. I know that you want to talk about him as well. Pedro Neto, player consistently being linked with Arsenal as we get edge towards the January transfer window. You know, will Arsenal make a move? Will they sort of reignite that interest that we know they had a couple of summers ago? I mean, we're getting lots of questions coming in about him. First of all, what are your sort of thoughts on Neto as a player and as a potential Arsenal target?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy, isn't it, to dive into all the details about how much it would cost, whether it's the right position, but sort of immediately, if I look at Pedro Neto, I see a player that I think would thrive and excel in this Arsenal side, probably as that backup to Martinelli and Saka, which I think we've seen Arteta needs over the last few weeks. As good as Arsenal were defensively against City, and obviously as wonderful as that result was, it was a rare game without Martinelli and Saka, and you felt without them, you just wanted that third option that brings a little bit of oomph, a little bit of ball carrying, stretching play in behind, whether that's getting to the byline, getting to crossing positions, shooting positions. And Neto has all of that. You know, this guy looks really special for a very ordinary Wolves team. I mean, he is going to carry a huge creative burden if Wolves are going to stay up. And, you know, if Wolves are going to stay up, they're probably going to need to keep a hold of Pedro Neto for the whole season. But we can come on to that as the conversation goes. But for me, he looks like an Arsenal player. He looks like a Mikel Arteta Arsenal forward. And there aren't many of those guys out there in the Premier League, in Europe. So I think if you're interested in one, you really need to be doing all your due diligence and making sure he's as interested in you as you have been in him.
Yeah, I remember watching an interview of him. I think it was an old interview, but it did the rounds again. Obviously, everyone getting excited, and he was asked, you know, who was your team when you were sort of growing up, your English team, and he said Arsenal. And so maybe that will help, because I imagine there are going to be a fair few clubs sniffing around if/when Jorge Mendes does his business and gets him out of Wolves, which I suggest is not going to be too far away. Whether it be January, like you said, I mean, I think he's so important to them in terms of staying up, because we know Wolves struggle in the final third. They don't score many goals, they don't create that many opportunities, and you take Neto out of that side, and you know they're going to struggle to stay up even with some pretty poor quality teams in the Premier League. I think he's got 5 assists already this season. He'd only got I think he'd got 1 in the last 2 seasons combined, or something really mad stats like someone saw. I haven't actually checked him out myself.
He's averaging 0.55 assists per 90 minutes, and Bukayo Saka, who I think's had a pretty great creative season, is at half that level. So yeah, right now he has burst out of the traps, and yeah, I think it is 5 assists. 5 assists, not bad at all.
Not bad at all. He just looks like that Pedro Neto we saw look so impressive a couple of years ago before the injury, didn't he? The injury definitely took its toll and kind of hampered him a little bit. And he did, you know, last season he was nothing like the sort of level that we've seen from him before that injury. But he looks on it now. I watched a bit of the Man City game a couple of weeks ago. He did 1 breakaway. I can't remember. Did it lead to the second goal, or did it lead to a shot being saved? I can't remember. But the pace of him, he was so quick, absolutely rapid. It was like one of those things where I was watching it by myself, and I actually had to sort of laugh out loud at how quick he was. It's just like, geez, bloody hell, he was rapid. And he's a really exciting player for me, Pedro Neto, and he would be absolutely one that I would very, very much like to see at Arsenal. Just before you get onto that, let me just bring these questions up so we can sort of continue this theme. Okay, there's one from Mitral Valve, I think that is. Says, question: Pedro Neto is a good player, may have potential with the right coaching to be great. How much is a fair fee for him? And while I understand Premier League proven it as a desirable quality, is it over-indexed? Brighton's Adringa isn't Prem proven, but he has been good in his time in the league. And then below that, I've got another one from, I think that's Kengis198, is it? It says, with the interest in Pedro Neto, would the attack not be too stacked? We have Trossard, Nelson, Martinelli, Saka and Neto fighting it out for 2 positions. Considering Saka and Martinelli start when fit, one of Trossard or Nelson would have to be sold. So there's a couple of things to consider there. What do you think, first of all, how much you think would be a fair fee for Pedro Neto?
Well, we've just been talking, haven't we, about what his presence would mean for Wolves' survival. So I think you kind of have to sort of say what Arsenal would think of as a fair fee, and I'm sure Arsenal would go into this if their long-standing interest crystallizes into a January offer. And I have to say, like, correct me if I'm wrong, I've not been told that anything is imminent. From what I understand of the financials, it would certainly involve some pretty detailed conversations with ownership, with Vinay, about how you can finance that deal, because Arsenal ran into complications financing, you know, the signing of David Raya, having not sold money. Like, you know, they managed to do it, but it was something that they had to consider. So mid-season signing Pedro Neto, very expensive. And I think Mitral Valve asks a very good question there about, are we just going, well, we know he can do it in the Premier League, so you should pay that price? Because Neto, 60, 70 million. I mean, you know, there are guys out there like a Jeremy Frimpong, who's kind of established himself as a right winger. I think the guy's Laurenti at Sassuolo. But the Premier League experience really matters. And if you look at, you know, someone who's getting, like we say, an assist every 130 odd minutes in the Premier League, who looks like he's over the worst of those injury woes, and I think he's going to very soon have played more minutes this season than he did in either of the 2 preceding seasons. You know, I think you have to be willing to go high for that player because of the knowledge that he can do it with a pretty ordinary Premier League team. I always feel like buying from abroad, you can get real quality, but it's just a lot more of a shot in the dark, especially with wingers, whether it's from a transition-heavy league like the Bundesliga or like Serie A, one that is just a bit less, it doesn't exist at the Premier League's pace. It makes you think, could Arsenal have done the Moussa Diaby deal instead? I know it was one that many of us were quite keen on, but that's in the past. Like, Mitchell Valve is right that Premier League experience and proven quality is over-indexed, but given where Arsenal hope to be in January, it would feel like the right move.
Is it more important a factor if you're signing someone in January? I think it probably is. Like, you look back to last January when Arsenal signed Trossard in January, and he just came in and was bang, he was ready and he hit the ground running. I think if you sign someone in summer and you can take them away, you can get them on the pre-season tour, you can bed them in a little bit. That's it, slightly easier. But if you're coming in the middle of the season, if you're going for the title, which we hope, fingers crossed, Arsenal will be come January, I think that's when it's more an important factor, isn't it? That they're just there and they can just come in and bang. They don't need to adjust to the demands. They know the defenders they're going to be up against, all that sort of thing. I think is a really useful thing. I don't think it's quite so important in the summer. You get a little bit more leeway in that regard. I think if you're looking at these, I was just looking it up now. His contract's till 2027 at Wolves, 23. I mean, they're in a very strong position, Wolves. In that regard.
However, financially, it has been, I think we don't fully appreciate how much they spent last season with Lopetegui to get that team safe. And they recouped a fair bit in the summer, I know. But, Fosun are not like pouring money into that club anymore. It's not.
How much did City sign Núñez for?
Yeah, that's the problem. They've got Núñez, and Núñez was getting on for 60, I think. But what I mean is that they're not, their finances are eased a lot by those two sales, but it's not, I don't think they have the financial muscle that we maybe thought Wolves would a few years ago.
But do you think they'd be able to ask for that much more for Neto than they did for Núñez?
I don't think Núñez is very good. So yeah,
Núñez was about 53 million. Looking at it, it was 53 million. I think City got. I think 60 million is probably. You'd get into a conversation maybe for 60 million. I think you've got to factor in Jorge Mendes as well, of course, and what sort of conversations he's had with Wolves. We know how influential he is at that club, and has there been some sort of agreement when that new contract was signed with Neto? It wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility that there's some sort of number that he might well have already agreed with them. So we'll have to wait and see. I don't think it's going to be too long before we see Pedro Neto leave that club, and I do. Yeah, I very much want to see Arsenal in a running.
Do the injuries worry you at all?
Not necessarily. I think just because he's looking so fit now, that I think it looks like he's sort of got over those injuries. Everyone, unless you're Bukayo Saka, pretty much everyone goes through has bad injuries, don't we? I mean, Martinelli's done it. I wouldn't be worried if Arsenal was signing Martinelli now if he was at another club and had the same injury record that he's had since he's been at Arsenal. I wouldn't be worried about that. I'd be very excited about that. So, not really. What do you reckon about the question at the bottom there in terms of would Arsenal be too well stacked? Would you have to move someone on potentially if you brought in someone like Neto? Because, I mean, there are a few, Arsenal are pretty well stocked when it comes to players who can play out wide. And I mean, we've discussed Smith Rowe on here before, haven't we? But, maybe Trossard or Nelson, potentially Nelson, I suppose. I think whatever it is, if Arsenal are going to be bringing in players from now on, I think there are going to have to be some pretty sizable sales in the next year or so anyway to help with that. So I think it's probably just a matter of fact really that some players might be going out fairly soon.
Yeah, I mean, kind of as Kenji said there, the numbers are sufficient in every position in the squad. It's about that uptick in quality. And I mean, I think if Neto comes in January or if he comes in the summer, to me that I would look at that and say that's it for Reiss Nelson at Arsenal. If he wants to move, but this is what you have to do, isn't it? If you aspire to be a title-winning team, you have to make those upgrades. You have to say to Reiss Nelson, "Thanks for your service, but you might want to look for a different club because we're looking to get a better player in this position." So yeah, they would be too stacked. They'd have to move someone on. But like you said, Charles, can't think of many positions in this squad at the moment where there's just an obvious hole for the long term, and you go, okay, we'll just buy someone. We don't need to move someone out to make room. The squad has two players in every position, and then the next few years will just be about upping the quality in all those positions. Yep,
I think so. Cool. All right. Well, let's talk about this weekend, shall we? It's just nice to have a game to talk about this weekend. Actually, saying 3 days away, and what a game it is. Arsenal versus Chelsea. If Arsenal win this, it's 4 years in a row, 4 seasons in a row they'd have won at Stamford Bridge. When you think of the misery we've had at Stamford Bridge over the last sort of 10, 15 years, that's a pretty remarkable turnaround. And going into it on the back of that City win, confidence is going to be high. We wait and see. I mean, Bakayo's obviously, we don't know yet what this, how he's recovered. We hope
we have suspicions
and fit, but we'll have to wait and see if those suspicions are realised, and he does indeed start at the weekend. What are your thoughts going into the Chelsea game about what we could well expect and some of the sort of decisions Mikel's facing when it comes to his team selection?
It's quite funny, isn't it? Because you mentioned those 4 years. I almost think you can trace the growth of the Arteta project at Stamford Bridge. I know we always talk about the game at the Emirates where everything changed, but a few years ago, those wins at Stamford Bridge were slightly fluky wins against teams with bigger fish to fry. I remember, was it? There was the game. Was it Smith Rowe against Chelsea?
Yeah, it's a 1-0.
Just completely switch off because they're like, yeah, go on, lads, we've got Champions League to worry about. You have your win. And then if you take that all the way to last season, where I know it was only a 1-0, but it was like for a whole 90 minutes, Arsenal just held Chelsea at arm's length and were like, yeah, we're not going to waste any energy. We don't need to beating you lot. I think this one will be different because Chelsea have taken those strides forward. And of course, even with Champions League considerations, we will, I'm certain, see a pretty much full strength team. I wonder what he does with Gabriel at the back flying in from Brazil, although considering that game was last night, so that's Tuesday night, isn't it? It's not, it's not an unreasonable amount of time for him to get ready. So it feels like
Gabriel will start.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen what happens when you don't use him. They don't look quite as solid. So yeah, I mean, it's probably just the team, isn't it? The only question I have is whether he goes for Rice, Havertz, Rice, Vieira, or Partey, Rice. Do you have any preference in those?
I absolutely do. I did my regular show was kind of build around that this morning, in fact, and I think he should. That's what I actually done. I've done my predicted. I've done my 11 that I would go for, and this is it.
Yeah.
If Partey's fit, obviously he got 64 minutes last night for Ghana. Got 45 minutes the game before, so he's he's building up his minutes. Should be back today, I would imagine, at Colney. Then you've got a couple of days of training and to assess him. And if there's no issues, if he's fine, from the journey, from the games, I'd be playing Thomas Partey. If Thomas Partey's not fit, I'd be playing Jorginho. I don't think this is a game. I wouldn't be playing Havertz at 8. I wouldn't be playing Vieira at 8. I think it's one of those games where you want two of your 6s, with Rice obviously a little bit further ahead, just like we saw against Manchester City. I think it's definitely the game for that. I just think the midfield is going to be a really key area. I think that's Chelsea's kind of strong point. To be fair, when you look at, they're probably going to be up against Caicedo and Enzo, I imagine, and for all Chelsea's faults, they've got a good midfield, and I think you want to sort of try and win that battle. If you do that, you've got a good chance going on to win the game. And providing Saka's fit, I think it's hopefully going to be the first time we see the front three start together this season, and could potentially be looking at that as Arsenal's strongest 11. I would say
it's the 11 you would play like if there was a cup final tomorrow, isn't it? And I think you're absolutely right that. I think the sense I've got sort of looking on social media, never the perfect reflection of the fan base, but I think there are few many people pricing in 3 points at Stamford Bridge. And like you say, that is not something that we used to do in the Arsenal community. And, the points might not be there at the moment. Chelsea got 11 from 8, but Chelsea look good. I've seen them a few times this season, saw them against Liverpool. They had their moments where they were better than a very good team. And I would just, if you have that Rice Partey midfield, you can be confident, even against good players like Enzo and Caicedo, that you're controlling that. And if you're controlling that and you've got that defensive 4 that's looking pretty solid at the moment, you can be confident your forwards are going to take that. They're going to win. You're going to win the game in both boxes, aren't you? I think that's what I look at seeing that team. This will be tougher than a lot of fans think, but with that really strong lineup, I think Arsenal have got enough.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that it's kind of the front three really interests me because there's been a lot of talk about Arsenal this season not being as good, fluent, not being as fluent going forward, not being as much of a threat going forward, but they haven't had that front three at all. That's Arsenal's best front three, and we haven't seen it yet this season. If they can all be played together again, I'm sure that Arsenal are going to look a lot better with certainly with Odegaard behind him. Odegaard's an interesting one. For me, do you think he's kind of changed now as a player? Because obviously when he signed him, he was this creative playmaker coming in to create chances for forwards, that sort of stuff. But he's now more of a? It's like we've watched him transform into a goal-scoring midfielder, and has that kind of taken away the kind of creative burden that he had, and the sort of key pass type player that he was? It's like, are we seeing Odegaard sort of change into Odegaard Part 2 now at Arsenal?
I'm really struggling with all this because, like you say, we've had 14 minutes of the front three, and actually, sort of Saka's been in and out of the 11. Obviously, starting a lot, but coming off a lot. And on the right, Arsenal have quite often been playing these systems with Partey stay at right back. That means that Odegaard hasn't quite been in that comfort zone that he likes. I think to an extent we also forget that maybe what we saw last season of Odegaard, what was it, 15 goals, getting on for that, one of the top assist providers as well, that it's not like that's the baseline for next season, and because he's a youngster he will inevitably improve. It might just be that, like, in a pure output terms, it just doesn't come because the shots don't fly in. He makes a pass, and a good pass, but a trailing leg of a defender gets on it. And the stats tell us that Odegaard has been a little bit off it this season. But watching him, do you think he's been off it this season? I don't feel like he has.
No, I thought he was great against Man City, albeit not a huge threat. He led the press. He's so important in that. He's literally the man who makes Arsenal tick going forward. I forget the Bournemouth game, he was exceptional. Man United, I thought it was good. Tottenham, for that first half an hour against Tottenham, he was unreal. So no, I don't think he's really been off. I just think I just look at him now as a slightly different player. I just think he's potentially, we're just kind of seeing him change a little bit in terms of what he was when he first signed, and he's growing as a player, and he's still so young, and it's quite hard to pigeonhole him just purely as a number 10 playmaker. I think maybe he's moving a little bit beyond that now, and he's just becoming more and more of a goal threat potentially, and where sometimes he'd been passing, now he's shooting, and it's changing a little bit. There was one I was quite interested to ask. I got asked this question the other day, and I wanted to ask you about it. Someone said to me, "Is Thomas Partey underrated?" And it got me thinking. I was like, "Is Thomas Partey underrated?" And then it made me think, who is underrated in this Arsenal squad outside of Arsenal? Who would you reckon? I think I know my answer to this. Who do you reckon is like the most underrated player at Arsenal from people out, looking from the outside in now, other fans and stuff like that, when you look at this Arsenal team?
Yeah, I think that's quite easy. It's Ben White, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. I think it's definitely Ben White. I think the fact he's not playing for England as well, that people are just don't understand how good Ben White is.
Because also I think people think, say like the tactics writers, for instance, that I really enjoy reading, maybe the ones that kind of have the data and have some of the sort of Y-scout. I think the way they view Ben White is, well, Zinchenko inverts into midfield, so White must really be a sort of third centre-back guy. No. I mean, he will do that if that's what's required. He did it brilliantly against City. He'll be that, but then every once in a while, he'll also be your classic overlapping fullback who, again, kind of like how Odegaard hasn't created lots of chances this season, White hasn't, but his movement creates these avenues for others. His understanding with Saka, and like, as much as I don't particularly think Gareth Southgate should be criticised for starting Kyle Walker, maybe the best right back, one of the best right backs in the world over the last 5-10 years, or even Reece James or Trent Alexander-Arnold. Like, Gareth, you've got this brilliant little pocket connection thing, whatever you want to call it, with Saka and White. That could really be effectively exploited. He is phenomenal. I think Partey what people maybe don't appreciate is the quality of his passing and how Arsenal get this very quick ball when Thomas Partey is the one who gets it off the centre-backs and moves through midfield. And I think Ødegaard might be more effective there. My feeling is that while he's playing very well, quite often he's going to get the ball rather than it coming to him quickly. And that's meaning he's got to do more work to get to that passing position. But yeah, I mean, Ben White is sensational. And one day he might get his flowers, but I feel like it might not come outside Arsenal. I mean, he's going to get his new contract soon. So at least that'll show Arsenal value him and don't underrate him.
Do you reckon ahead of Chelsea, do you think, and we know that Mikel loves to do this, what do you reckon he's going to do in terms of keeping cards close to his chest on Saka's fitness? Do you expect him to come out in the press conference on Friday morning and be like, yep, Saka's fit, he's playing? Or do you think we're going to see some of Mikel's injury team news mind games, do you think?
Yeah, I know I've been nagging you that we should talk about this. I'm really glad you brought it up because, we both covered this club late in the Arsene Wenger days, and I think Arsene was almost too honest. He would tell you things that kind of hadn't even been confirmed by the club doctors to him yet, but he would just sort of put this like, "Oh, Theo will be back in 3 weeks." It was always 3 weeks, wasn't it? And I see the sort of sporting reasons why that is unhelpful. I also sometimes get the feeling that Arteta is kind of deliberately withholding the truth, knows things that he's just refusing to tell you. And with Saka in that pre-match press conference, he said he's in contention. And then I think it was James Ollie asked a few sort of follow-up questions that Arteta refused to answer. What I wonder, and I don't know, I kind of digging around, but don't feel like I know for certain, is whether he really did know it's probably not happening. He's in contention, but it's a sort of 1% chance. And, that he almost enjoyed the kind of playing Black Ops or whatever you want to call it with Man City, trying to convince City to prepare for a team with Saka. And obviously we saw those stories doing the rounds in the 48 hours between the press conference and the game that Saka was going to be fit. They brought him to the Emirates even though he wasn't fit. It's a little bit. Can I get one other thing, and then I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Obviously, working for an American company, I think there's a very different culture of injury reporting in America, which I think is quite admirable. I think their view would be that fans expect to know whether the superstars are playing when they go to the NBA games, when they go to the MLS, and this is very big in the context of Inter Miami charging loads of money to see the team that has Lionel Messi on. I think in England we don't have that culture. If you pay for an Arsenal ticket, you're going to see Arsenal, and you need to accept it's up to the manager who the best players are. But I do think there's a level where Arteta is sort of skirting close to like it being a little bit unreasonable, what he says and doesn't say about injuries and what he keeps close to his chest. I mean, then I set all that against, it's not his job to provide injury updates. It's his job to win football matches, and your opponent not knowing who might play gives you a marginal gain. So I do understand why he does it, but I do find it frustrating, and I do wonder if at some stage he might actually end up just lying. I don't think he is at the moment.
Yeah. Well, frankly, I don't think we don't deserve to know. I don't think.
It's true.
No, I don't think fans deserve to know, because as fans, you want your team to win, don't you? And if the coach not giving away the starting lineup is going to help win, because the opposition manager is not going to know how to line up his team or who he could be going up against, then surely that's more important as a fan, isn't it? Than knowing 24 hours before who's going to play and who's not. I get what you mean. Like the Messi.
But why have managers for sort of 100 years beforehand just told the truth?
I don't know.
Told you everything that's happening.
Well, yeah, it's their prerogative, I suppose. But I don't think they need to. I don't think they're. I don't think they're being out of order if they just decide to do kind of what Mikel does and says they're in contention and then leaves it as that. Sometimes he does say it, I think, but I think it's more in the ones who are kind of 50-50, I suppose. Those ones I think you're perfectly within your rights to. The one, do you remember last year when Ukraine had announced that Zinchenko was injured and had done something and had announced it, and we sat in a press conference at Colney and we asked Mikel about it. I literally asked him about it. And he was like, "Oh no, he's still in contention for this weekend." It's like Ukraine just announced he's out for 4 weeks, and you're saying he's still in contention. That's where you just like, "Oh come on, just tell the truth." You don't have to be pulling the wool over our eyes for those ones. But I think the ones such as Saka for Man City, if there was a chance, I don't think he needs to be telling you. I mean, Arsenal have gone maybe above and beyond recently. The one the other day, what was that before Man United when they put Thomas Partey in the training pictures, even though definitely wasn't training, but those rumours had started to emerge that Partey had suffered an injury in training, and then Arsenal put out the pictures, and in the background you saw Thomas Partey, and it was like,
I think a lot of fans maybe don't realise how aware Arsenal have become over the last 3 or 4 years that everyone goes through those trading pictures, and because we used to, part of our job on a Friday afternoon, you would check those training pictures, and if you saw that Thomas Partey wasn't in them, you'd hit the phone straight away and be like, is Partey out? And I think they've become did you see for I think it was for City, all of the pictures for sort of these very close cut, like here is a picture of Emile Smith-Rowe's face and nothing else.
Well, I mean, when you're playing Man City and it's Arsenal versus Man City, margins are so slim. You don't want to give anything away, do you? And I can totally understand that. When you're going up against a team you haven't beaten for 12, you've lost 12 games in a row to, you don't want anything potentially influencing what Pep is thinking ahead of that game at all. You want everything to be a mystery, don't you? So I can completely understand that, to be fair. And the Messi stuff is really interesting. Like I remember I was watching, it was one social media clip. It might have been ESPN FC, which genuinely, like, some of the stuff they talk about just drives me mad. But they, someone was having a go saying it's, these fans are paying all these huge amounts of money to see Lionel Messi, and it's, they deserve to know if he's playing or not. And because I think had Miami sort of wheeled him out for the last sort of 10 seconds of an open training session or something like that.
Yeah, he's always questionable.
Yeah.
I do wonder if with Messi and Miami, there is like a specific thing of no, people are actually paying here to see, and they're paying a lot more than they would. They're paying to see Messi.
Yeah, they are paying to see Messi, aren't they? It's very different, I suppose, with Messi. So I can kind of understand it in that regard, especially when people are parting with hundreds and hundreds of dollars to see Messi, and then thousands, and he's not. There's no chance he was ever going to play in that game, and so I can kind of understand it. That will sting for those people who are paying that amounts of money. But I think over here the culture is so different. You're not paying to see a player over here, are you? It doesn't matter who it is. You're paying to see the team, and whoever's playing in that team, that's what you're going to see. So I think it is a little bit different. Right, let's move on, shall we? We've got some questions to sort of see us through to the end of the show. So let's crack in onto some of those. We've got here one from Carlo. It says, "Hi, Charles. Question for you and James. Would you rather sign Ivan Toney in January or stick with what we have up front for the season and go all out for Victor Osimhen in the summer?" I'll hand that one over to you, James.
Yeah, Osimhen, no doubt. I love him. He's great. He's sort of Toney, but can do half a dozen other things. I mean, I don't like the sort of go all out. Am I sort of guaranteed Toney, but I have to fight for Osimhen? I mean, I'll take that fight. I think he's excellent. He's probably going to be the best striker on the market, non-Mbappe, for a fair few years. So I'd want to make sure that you're not priced out of that. But I don't know. I feel like this show's turning me into an Ivan Toney hater that I am absolutely not. I just think with this one, you've got to make the right decision, and the right decision is probably to wait it out and see if you can get an Osimhen in the summer.
I really like Ivan Toney. I'm not an Ivan Toney hater like you, but and I like the idea of Arsenal signing Ivan Toney. But if you're saying to me who would you prefer, then yes, I agree. I think I would go for Osimhen, save my money. If that was the straight choice and we're playing Football Manager here, then I would probably save my money for the summer, go with what we've got till the end of the season, and potentially, add some more money to that kitty and try and get Osimhen. And it's interesting how much Osimhen's going to go for in the summer if he does go. He hasn't actually signed this new contract, has he? It's never been signed.
No.
It's always been, he's going to sign. Yeah, he's always like, he's going to sign it, but it's never actually been signed. So he's only 24, Osimhen, as well. I didn't realise he was 16. So he's a good 4 years younger. He's 4 years younger than Toney, or 3.5 years younger than Toney. So yeah, I'm in agreement. I think we both are that we'd probably both would wait for Osimhen. Do you reckon what do you reckon is more important for Arsenal? We're talking on the Neto thing. Would you do you think a central striker or another winger out of those sort of two positions? Because could you sign Osimhen and Neto together? I mean, that's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. I think there's this strange thing where I always think in January, I'd feel like the winger's more important because you can do and mend with Havertz. I think Jesus is very good. But then once it comes to the summer, I think it may well be the time then to put your cash on the table and get the superstar striker, the 35 goals a season in all competitions guy. I know that's quite contradictory, but hoping it makes sense, maybe.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. I think I get what you say. It'd be nice to get both, though, wouldn't it? Indeed.
I mean, Osimhen's about to spend maybe 6-7 months playing football under Antonio Conte. So, I mean, that guy's going to want to walk anywhere else after.
Is Conte going to Napoli?
It certainly appears that Rudy Garcia is not long for the job he's only just got. And my colleagues in Italy sort of very confident that Conte's in the mix. Luckily, none of them live in Naples because I'm like, good God, you wouldn't want to go near that ground for 8 months.
Osimhen under Conte, that's an interesting one.
I mean, Harry Kane did well. I just don't think anyone enjoyed watching it or playing in it.
No. I think we're going to see Osimhen dropping in and becoming a number 10 under Conte.
Oh, God.
Right, here's another one here from Charlie J 1775 saying, "Hi Charles James. Arsene signed some absolute gems, of course, but fair to say that wasn't the case for all of his signings. Who are some of your most memorable bad Arsene signings? Stepanovs, Andre Santos, Kallstrom, Sonogo particularly stand out for me." Thank you, Charlie. This is an interesting one. Looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, Santos off the list because of that game against Chelsea.
Yeah, he was terrible in that first half against Chelsea, though, and then he popped up with his goals, with the goal to me.
Isn't that was like that Arsenal team in microcosm? Was like for 45 minutes he'd be like, "God, what are you lot doing? Do you not know how to play football?" And then they go and score 5 goals.
Yeah, right, I'm going first. I'm going first.
Go on.
And this is the undoubted worst signing in Arsenal's history for me. 100%. It literally sends shivers down my spine. Mikel Silvestre. He is the worst signing that Arsene Wenger ever made. He was so bad. He was awful. And I know Stepanovs genuinely could barely play football, but and Silvestre is a far better player than Igor Stepanovs was. But by the time Arsenal signed Silvestre, he was dreadful. The fact that Man United were happy to let him go to Arsenal said all he needed. It said all it should have been needed to be said. And he was so bad. He was genuinely awful. He annoys me. Just looking at it annoys me. That picture of that signing, it was just a horrible time. Horrible time.
I think that is the right answer because it sort of has this holy grail of like, not only was he bad for Arsenal, like you said, you kind of had seen him be good. And for a lot of his Man United career, you were like, oh, I swear Arsenal had been linked with him beforehand. And you were like, oh, if Arsenal had got him, that would have been great. And then Manchester United fans get to revel in how he fell off a cliff the minute he pulled on an Arsenal shirt. You are right. You have won. If I have to pick another option, the first name my head went to was Park Chu-young. Mate, you should have just carried on doing your medical with Lille or Lens or whoever it was. The minute I think almost with him there was quite a bit of like excitement of like, oh, okay, got another number 9, ready to go here. And the first time he stepped on the pitch, you were like, "Yeah, nope, that's not it. Yeah, we don't want him."
He
Thanks.
barely got a chance, though, did he? He scored.
Yeah.
Did he score in the League Cup? He did score a goal in the League Cup.
I have his Wikipedia page up, so I will tell you he scored in the. No, it's not. Oh yeah, no. Oh yeah, Bolton in the League Cup.
Yeah. I remember him scoring at the Emirates.
He scored against Bolton, and that's always a plus for any Arsenal player.
Yeah, it was quite a good finish, I seem to remember, sort of curling finish. Yeah, that obviously didn't work out too well, but I do feel like we never really got a chance to see him, potentially because he was so bad that we never got a chance to see him.
Another one, I mean, again, definitely not the worst footballer, but in terms of like really bad process, Lucas Perez, Arsenal want him, offered him, don't want him, aren't offered him, decide they want him, and then he never plays. Although when he does, he plays really, really well. And then I think they paid 18 million for him, got 3 back.
Yeah.
I mean, that was when money was being wasted at Arsenal. And we should say it wasn't all, the Unai Emery, Raul Sanllehi years. That was a real waste of money.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the question again. I'm trying to see if it was like, who is
I don't like having Sanogo in there.
I'm wondering if we're looking at like terrible players or terrible money. I mean, worse money for value. Obviously, you're talking about Nicolas Pepe, aren't you? Oh no, we're talking about Arsene Wenger signings, aren't we? Oh, sorry, we're talking about Wenger signings. Oh well, Mustafi's right up there. 35 million. 35 million for Mustafi. Certainly other. Julio Baptista, definitely. He was awful. I know he scored 4 goals at Anfield, and it was a brilliant night. The Beast scored 4 goals at Anfield, but take that one game out of it, he was dreadful for such a talented player who I'd really wanted Arsenal to sign, because like the 2 years leading up to him arriving on loan, Arsenal had really tried to sign him permanently from Real Madrid. It looked like they were going to. It didn't work out. We finally got him, and there was lots of excitement about Arsenal signing this big, powerful number 9 type player. And he was so bad. His first touch, my first touch was better than his. And I've got a terrible first touch. he was really disappointing. He's right up there for me as one of the most disappointing signings in terms of what he actually contributed when he signed.
Yeah, and they're the ones I remember. I don't remember, to be honest, I don't remember much of Stefanovs except that game against Man United, because you quite early on are like, yeah, I'm not having him. It's crap.
Yeah, he was genuinely terrible, Igor Stefanovs. He was just he basically won a competition sign for Arsenal. That's what he looked like. He was that bad. Like, people compare like Sigan to him, which is really unfair, because Sigan was he wasn't brilliant, but he was a decent player and an important player for Arsenal and had some good games. But Stefanovs was genuinely a pub player who somehow ended up playing for Arsenal.
Another one for the players I thought would be great that I kind of really resent, Nelson Vivas.
Yeah, I've got a big dislike in it, just because of that game against Leeds. We lost the title, and he went walkabout at the back post. And I've been watching the Beckham documentary reluctantly, I have to say. It's good. I liked it.
Yeah, but you know what? It brings back a lot of chastening memories. Yeah. And I thought I was like, okay, well, we've got to watch the England-Argentina game. Give us, the opening of the next episode should be, but don't worry, Argentina didn't get to win the World Cup. Here is 10 minutes of Dennis Bergkamp's goal against Argentina for the Netherlands. That documentary is painful because it brings back all those times that Arsenal should have spoiled Man United's day. And I spent an awful lot of the bit around United beating Spurs to win the league and the treble game. Fucking Nelson Vivas.
I didn't watch that bit. I didn't watch that episode. 1999. I will die still bitter about 1999. That will never leave me. It was just the FA Cup semi-final is up there as the most painful games I've ever been at. The replay, and then the fact that Arsenal should have won the league, didn't. Vivas go and walk about against Leeds on the penultimate game. They should have. They were so lucky, United, that season. They should have got nothing. Literally, shouldn't have won a trophy. They got hammered by Bayern Munich in the final. Managed to sneak 2 injury time goals. We beat them 3-0 twice. Once in the Charity Shield, once at Highbury. Drew at Old Trafford. We're miles better than that year, and ended up losing after because of a penalty.
But you know what? It's the way you'd want to win the treble, isn't it? No one wants to win it the City way, where it's not that hard. You want to win it kind of when you shouldn't.
I'll always be bitter about that. Yeah, I actually want to move on from this because just talking about 1999 really does bug me. Right, next one. Oh God, get Sylvester off. I brought Mikel Silvestre back on, just giving myself nightmares again. Right, Ben Brown. Hey guys, would yourself and James like a Saudi takeover at Arsenal? Will it be the only way forward in the next few years? I've just got, well, for me, no. I absolutely don't want state ownership at Arsenal. Never do, never will. End of. For James Benge, it would be like the greatest thing ever.
It would help.
He would get every story going in the world. He would break every single transfer news there is going, because there is only one Saudi correspondent when it comes.
Which is why it shows how good a person I am, that I absolutely would crawl over broken glass for Arsenal to not get taken over by a Saudi Arabian club. It's the same reason that you never want to manage Man City on Football Manager. It is, whether actually, or like, you know, with 115 charges, or, you know, with the intriguing sponsorship deals Newcastle are making with Saudi airlines that might not even exist. It's just not, I don't really believe it would be that much fun to win that way. I know that there are Arsenal fans that have grown up and not seen them win the league, and they want to see Arsenal win the league. But it's cheat mode. It's turning down the difficulty setting on your video game to easy when you are better than easy. I don't want that. And I don't particularly want every sort of goal and every exciting moment to be like, oh God, you know, every great moment you think, oh, what's this doing for Saudi Arabian soft power? You know, all respect to Saudi Arabian fans that want to play football. If footballers want to go to Saudi Arabia to earn money, that's their choice. But if I'm in a position where I can say Saudi Arabia can't take over Arsenal, yeah, I don't want it.
No, I don't. Absolutely not. 100%. I don't want it. I think I do wonder if, like, the age of fan, sort of dictates the answer to this question. And I think, obviously, like you said, we've all seen Arsenal win the title and all that. But I just don't think most people, certainly my age, your age, you young whippersnappers like you, even, would just want it. I just don't think a win wouldn't feel the same as a win for me in that. And I know a lot of people will probably disagree with me, and a lot of youngsters will probably disagree with me on that, and they'll be like, sod it, take the money, let's just win. But it just wouldn't feel the same to me, and Arsenal would just feel very, very different to me. So
the one thing I have to say, there is no owner in the world that, I mean, I think doing PR for the Saudi Arabia, for a regime that murders, you know, inflicts the death penalty on its own population, is beyond the pale. But there is no option out there that doesn't make you feel a little bit icky. I really don't like the fact that the Cronkies have donated money to the Trump campaign. If I were a Man United fan, I would feel really uncomfortable about the pollution being put out by Ineos. And is Manchester United just being used to make you think of Ineos as a sports brand rather than one of the biggest polluters in the United Kingdom? Like, there are none where you don't have to, like, at some stage separate your love for the team and ethics, but it's a little bit easier with KSE, with Jim Ratcliffe, than it is with kind of any country anywhere in the world that's just doing this to launder their reputation.
Yeah, and it's just I just think if you win something with, and it sounds stupid because you're talking about multi-billionaires in KSE. I mean, literally billionaire, you know, huge amounts of money, huge amounts of resource, but it still just feels, especially with modern football, that if you win something with just a billionaire rather than a state owner, it kind of would feel, like if Arsenal beat Manchester City with City's unlimited riches. And it's not plucky old Arsenal and all that sort of stuff, because obviously it's not. You still got a billionaire owner, but it still would just feel something even more and mean something even more. And it's why every single time Man City, I always want Man City to win. Now, if Arsenal aren't going to win, I want Man City to win things, just because it means nothing to me. It's just like, oh, well, they should win. You know, look at how they've done it. Whereas I'd much rather them win it than Chelsea or Tottenham or Man United even, and things like that, just because if those teams won something, I'd be like, oh, that just really hurts. I hate it. But when Man City win it, it's just like, it just goes so straight over my head. It's just like, I don't care. They should be winning it. And if they don't, then, you know, they've completely failed. So yeah, I think we're both quite in the same sort of boat when it comes to this one. I think we've got one more. In fact, I think we've got a couple more. So Azim here, this is taking us back, James. This will take you back, to about 2005, probably, I imagine.
There's a way back before then.
What are your first memories of Arsenal? So, what are your first memories of Arsenal, James?
I'm on holiday in Sorrento. TV's on. Don't know why this is on, but Dennis Bergkamp is scoring a hat trick at Filbert Street. And it was him. I don't know what it was about him, but well, I mean, you do know it's Dennis Bergkamp. He's an alien. And I just was like, that's the team I want. And I'd sort of flitted. And I'm from the Midlands. My dad is a Chelsea fan. I have no connection to Arsenal, but Dennis Bergkamp, which is why I will refuse to meet Dennis Bergkamp at any opportunity, because you should never meet, not even your heroes. This is like meeting Zeus for me. But only bad things can happen when you meet the gods. And Dennis Bergkamp for me is God.
Yes, he most certainly is God. I can't believe your first memory of Arsenal was Dennis Bergkamp. It makes me feel so old.
I'm sorry.
That game at Filbert Street annoys me as well. Talking about like seasons that annoy me, that game annoys me. It's kind of similar to, but not quite as bad, of when the Champions League, a game when Arsenal lost in the quarterfinal at Anfield, when Walcott did that amazing run. But then that should have been Walcott's big moment. But then obviously the game straight afterwards, Arsenal conceded a goal, lost 4-2 after a horrible penalty was given, and so it sort of took away from the moment. And that game at Filbert Street, Bergkamp did that amazing thing, scored to make it 3-2 in the 94th minute, and then Arsenal still went and conceded an equaliser to Steve Walsh about a minute later and drew 3-3. It still bugs me.
I still don't remember that.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, my first memories of Arsenal. Well, my dad grew up literally where the Emirates now stands on Hornsey Road. He's a Holloway boy, and so Arsenal was just from when I can remember. Arsenal's been in my life. Charlie Nicholas was playing, and I loved the fact he had the same name as me, because my two brothers, actually, one's a Liverpool fan, one's a Charlton fan. They were both Liverpool fans, because that was the era Liverpool obviously were dominating in the 80s and stuff like that. And so my dad somehow let both of them slip through the grasp, and they were Liverpool fans. And so I could have easily have gone down that route, but for some reason he managed to get me on the right path. And I think Charlie Nicholas was definitely a big part of that, the fact that he had the same name as me. And I really loved it. I really loved that. And then, yeah, I think the first really big game I remember was losing to Luton in the League Cup final in 88, that was. Because I can't, even though Charlie Nicholas scored the 2 goals against Liverpool in 87 in the final when they won, I can't remember watching that game, although I'm sure I did. But I remember losing to Luton in the following final in 87 or in 88 and crying my eyes out that Arsenal had lost to a last-minute Brian Steen winner. And Nigel Winterburn had missed a penalty to make it 3-1 in that final. And my mum sent me to my bedroom because I was saying I wanted to kill Nigel Winterburn. And she sent me to my room because I was in such a state and saying that. And so, yeah, that's
your toxic fandom days.
I know. I think that's my first real memory of a big game. And my first match I actually went to Highbury was in the 88-89 season against Sheffield Wednesday. Drew 1-1. Merce scored from an Alan Smith cross. Imve Varadi scored for Sheffield Wednesday in front of the North Bank to go 1-0 up, and then we equalised. So that was my first game. So, yeah,
our audience of children on YouTube is going to, the last 5 minutes to them is going to mean absolutely nothing.
I'm sure there's some, please be some my age who is watching this and actually know what I've been talking about for the last 5 minutes or so then. Right, have we got another one to end? I think, yeah, this is the last one now here. It's from Scott. It says, hi, Charles, Scott here. As always, thanks for the top-notch content. Thank you very much, Scott. My question for you and James is this. You know how some coaches try to take their favourite players with them when they take a job at another club? Mourinho used to do this a lot. Which 2 or 3 players do you think Arteta would want to take with him from the current squad if he were to, brackets, and I'm certainly not wishing this, move to a different club? And do you think the choice of players he'd take would vary depending on if he stayed in the Premier League or went abroad?
Such a good question.
Coach, it is a good question. This. Right, I'll go first on this one. I think he would, Martin Odegaard, I think he would want to take. I think Odegaard's his man on the pitch. It's his captain. I think it's obvious that everything goes through Odegaard. I think he would absolutely take him. I think he would take, if he could, Bukayo Saka, because who the hell wouldn't? Quite frankly, I think he would be mad if he didn't. And then is there anyone else he would definitely try and take with him? I mean, you'd be mad not to try and sign Saliba, I would say. If you were a manager and you were going somewhere else, you would just, why, again, similar to Bukayo Saka, I think you'd just be mental if you didn't try and sign Saliba. So I'd probably go with those three players. I think purely Saka and Saliba because of their out-and-out quality and how good they are. But I think Odegaard, in terms of how him and Arteta just think alike and see the game alike, and Odegaard has everything Arteta wants from a player in that sort of position. So I'd probably go with them.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. And obviously, this is an entirely theoretical question because the minute, if Mikel Arteta ever does leave, and obviously we hope that doesn't happen, but the minute he does, I am locking all the doors in Colney. No one is getting out of there alive. No one is getting out of there for the next 3 years. No one leaves because what Mikel Arteta has built there is a really great squad. I think they are the first three. I'd throw a couple of other names in the mix, though, mostly because there's players he's so coveted. David Raya, who we know he's pretty much been trying to sign since the day he got in at Arsenal and Iñaki Caña joined him. I think you could probably see him taking Raya. He's got such a particular set of skills that it's really clear Arteta wants in a goalkeeper. And then the other one would be Gabriel Jesus, because Arteta clearly, we saw his powers of persuasion on Jesus when so many other clubs wanted him. He's done great things with him at City and Arsenal. So they would be the two obvious ones for me. Zinchenko as well. But I mean, he would be, if Arteta does go, he'd want half that squad, wouldn't he? Because where does he go where he has a better group of players than Arsenal? There's not many options. City, maybe like a Bayern, or maybe City, Bayern, Real Madrid. Well, you wouldn't go to Real, Barcelona.
Yeah.
That's it. And the good news is only one of them has the money to really he can go to Barcelona and try and they can put in a sort of loan offer for Saliba where they pay £20 million next year and see where that takes him. I think the hope has got to be that even though I can't see Arteta doing a Wenger length stay, I don't think there are going to be many jobs out there that tick all his boxes. The one that you'll always worry about, I think, will be Barcelona. I don't know about City. It's obvious they would consider him. I wonder, given the last few years, and I think it'll depend on when Pep goes and what Arsenal have won by then.
Yeah, I wonder how this sort of rivalry between the two clubs as well. It's like, will it become as heated as the City-Liverpool rivalry became, and and the hatred that sort of built up between those two clubs during that rivalry? Would that happen with Arsenal?
Or even because there was always that talk, wasn't there, that if Fergie was to ever leave United, they would love Arsene Wenger to take over. And I think he just felt like he couldn't, didn't he?
I don't think the United fans would have wanted him anyway, would they? Again, that sort of built up that sort of hatred and that rivalry that existed. It just made it almost impossible for that to even be a possibility, isn't it? Because of that, the rivalry. It was so intense, wasn't it, for those two teams? So I think he obviously has that relationship with City. I don't think that relationship has got strained to the point where they wouldn't try and appoint him potentially if Pep were to leave in the next year or so. But I do wonder if this rivalry continues over, say, 2, 3, 4 seasons, if that would change, because it would just become so intense. We've already kind of seen it at the end of the last game, with the Nicholas Jova, Kyle Walker spat. It's maybe those sort of things are beginning to build between these two teams at the moment. So I think that will play a big sort of part in how City potentially view Arteta. But anyway, I hope that never even happens anyway. We don't talk about that. And
you've got more chapters to get out of the book.
And for now, he's very much an Arsenal man. And hopefully we get that glorious title at the end of it all at some point. Look, what we are now, an hour and 5 minutes. So we have rambled on a little bit. Been a good show though, James. Enjoyed that?
I very much enjoyed it. Very fun way to spend the day.
Good. What we got next week? We got Champions League next week, haven't we? Is that
it's a Tuesday, I think,
night, isn't it? So another Wednesday for us. Yeah, I think Wednesday makes sense for this. Hopefully reacting to a better Champions League away day result than we got last time over in Lille. Did I tell you I've got my accreditation back now?
For Premier League?
Yep. So
viewers will be seeing you. I mean, we've said, haven't we?
Near you soon and back back again. I'm going to be doing some match stuff for goal again. Just purely Arsenal match stuff for them. Not every game. Home games, most home games at the Emirates, I'm still going to be in my seat. It'll mainly be away games. But yeah, I shall be back in the press box.
Much like soon. CBS have discovered with me, you just get the Arsenal games.
Yeah,
but we've said, haven't we, that we will have a look at doing some stuff on site as the season wears on.
Yeah.
So viewers and listeners should keep an ear or an eye peeled for that as well. I think.
But I'm not at Stamford Bridge this Saturday because I'm at Frankfurt talking. I'm a guest speaker at the World Book Fair in Frankfurt on Saturday, which should be interesting. So looking forward to that. And then
what I get that is for them.
I know.
Who else is there? Dickens, J.K. Rowling. What?
Gillan Ballaghay is there. He's talking.
Oh.
Before me on the same stage, about an hour before me, he's talking about his book, which has sold slightly more copies than my book.
Is this the Pochettino book?
No, the Messi book.
Did you see his Poch gifted his Ballaghay's book on Spurs to Mikel Arteta?
I did see that.
I'm like, give him a bit, like, give him a book about a winning team.
A really, really weird gift to give to a Chelsea player about a time when you were a Tottenham manager. I just thought it was a really weird gift.
It's incredibly Partridge. It's so like, here's a copy of Bouncing Back. Yeah. I love Poch, but it's a really Partridge thing to do.
Yeah, I wonder if you read it. It's a good goal by Mudryk. Did you see that Zinchenko told Mudryk that if he scores against Arsenal on Saturday, he's going to rip his balls off? It made me laugh. It's his post-match interview after the Ukraine game yesterday. It was like, yeah, I told him I'm going to rip his balls off if he scores on Saturday. Quite a sight.
Zinny, what a guy.
Yeah. And a good goal by Mudryk, actually. And so it's made me already start thinking, yeah, he's guaranteed to score this weekend, obviously, because narrative and all that.
Are Arsenal naming the Malta defence?
Malta went in front in that game. You see San Marino's scored against Denmark. That San Marino tweet was just gold. It was gold.
Oh, that's sensational. Yeah. That was, great week of international football, but by God, I'll be glad when it's over.
Yes, and it is back. The Premier League is back on Saturday, and that is a perfect way to end it. Cheers, James. Speak to you next week, mate.
Speak next week. Bye-bye.